began on a Friday morning, May 12, 2017, but the world did not know it was the end of an era yet. Across continents, in hospitals, in corporate boardrooms, and on subway trains, screens flickered and died. They were replaced by a single, terrifying red image demanding payment in Bitcoin. The message was simple, but the implications were catastrophic. Files locked. Systems frozen. Data held hostage. It was not a localized attack. It was not a targeted strike against a single corporation. It was a digital plague, spreading with a speed and ferocity that no security expert had predicted. Within hours, the infection had leaped from Europe to Asia, from North America to South America. It paralyzed the National Health Service in the United Kingdom, forcing ambulances to turn away patients. It shut down the operations of Maersk, the largest shipping company in the world, grounding cargo ships and halting global trade. It silenced the FedEx network. This was WannaCry. It was the first time ransomware had been weaponized into a global worm, turning the internet itself into a weapon of mass disruption. And in the center of the storm was a Bitcoin wallet that would trace the hands of ghosts in the machine. To understand the devastation, you must first understand the shadow that cast the light. For years, the United States National Security Agency had been holding digital vulnerabilities, zero-day exploits that could penetrate the most secure systems on Earth. They called this cache the equation group. These were not mere glitches, they were master keys to the digital kingdom. Among them was a vulnerability in the Microsoft Server Message Block Protocol, a fundamental part of how computers share files. The NSA named it Eternal Blue. They kept it secret, intending to use it for surveillance and offensive cyber operations. But secrets in the digital age are never truly safe. In April 2017, a hacker collective known as the Shadow Brokers dumped a massive cache of NSA tools onto the dark web. Eternal Blue was among them. The code was now public. It was no longer a state secret. It was a loaded gun left on a crowded street. The window of opportunity for the NSA to patch the vulnerability had closed. The door was wide open. The architects of the attack were not seen. They were not standing in a server room wearing masks. They were likely state-sponsored actors, operating from the shadows of the North Korean cyber warfare unit known as the Lazarus Group. But on that Friday, their identity did not matter. What mattered was the code. The malware was designed to exploit the Eternal Blue vulnerability to spread laterally across networks. Unlike traditional ransomware, which waits for a user to click a phishing link, WannaCry was a worm. It hunted. It scanned for vulnerable machines on the local network and the wider internet, and it infected them automatically. It required no human interaction. Once inside, it encrypted files using a strong encryption algorithm, rendering them useless. Then, it displayed the ransom note. The demand was $200 in Bitcoin, or $300 if paid within 3 days. If you did not pay, your data would be lost forever. The spread was exponential. In the first 24 hours, over 200,000 computers were infected across 150 countries. The technical elegance of the attack was horrifying. The worm utilized 2 separate methods to spread. The first was the Eternal Blue exploit, which targeted the SMBv1 protocol. The second was a secondary vulnerability in the Windows password guessing mechanism, known as Double Pulsar, which allowed the malware to install itself even if the first exploit failed. This dual-layer approach ensured that once a network was breached, it was likely to be fully compromised. The malware also contained a kill switch, a domain name that, if accessed, would stop the infection. A British security researcher, Marcus Hutchins, known online as Malwaretech, stumbled upon this domain by accident. He registered it to study the malware, inadvertently saving millions of devices from infection. But the kill switch did not stop the initial wave. The damage was already done. In the United Kingdom, the NHS was brought to its knees. Surgeries were cancelled. Patients were turned away. Doctors were forced to use pen and paper, reverting to the technology of the previous century. The human cost was immeasurable. In Spain, Telefonica's customer service lines went dead. In Russia, the Sberbank network was hit. In China, universities and gas stations were locked out. The chaos was global, and the financial cost was estimated in the billions of dollars. But the most telling clue lay in the cryptocurrency. The ransom demands were directed to a specific Bitcoin address. It was a digital fingerprint. CipherTrace analysts and blockchain forensic teams immediately began tracking the funds. The Bitcoin blockchain is immutable, a public ledger that records every transaction forever. They could see the money flowing in. They could see the wallets receiving the ransom. But they could not easily see who owned them. The Lazarus Group was known for using complex laundering techniques to obfuscate the trail. They used tumblers, mixers, and exchanges to wash the dirty Bitcoin. Yet, the sheer volume of the attack left a signature. The wallet received hundreds of transactions, totaling over $130,000. It was a small amount for a global attack, but it was enough to confirm the intent. The attackers wanted money. They wanted to profit from the chaos they had created. But the low ransom collection rate suggested something else. Perhaps the primary goal was not financial gain, but disruption. Perhaps the money was secondary to the message. The aftermath was a scramble for accountability. The FBI and the British National Crime Agency launched investigations. They pointed the finger at North Korea. The United States government formally accused the Lazarus Group of orchestrating the attack. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling. The code shared similarities with previous attacks attributed to the group, such as the Sony Pictures hack and the Bangladesh bank heist. The geopolitical tension was palpable. A non-state actor, or a state actor hiding as one, had struck a nerve that connected to the very infrastructure of the modern world. It proved that cyber warfare was no longer theoretical. It was real, it was destructive, and it could happen without a single soldier crossing a border. The technical details of the worm reveal why it was so dangerous. The SMB protocol is designed to allow computers to share resources. It trusts the network. WannaCry abused this trust. It did not need to trick a user. It simply needed a computer that had not been patched. Microsoft had released a patch for the vulnerability in March, 2 months before the attack. But many systems, especially older ones or those in critical infrastructure, had not updated. This is the eternal weakness of the digital age. Security is only as strong as the weakest link in the chain. Organizations often delay updates to avoid downtime, but in the face of a worm like WannaCry, delay is death. The worm exploited the gap between the release of the patch and the installation of the patch. It was a race against time, and the virus won. The ransomware industry had evolved. Before WannaCry, ransomware was mostly opportunistic. You got infected, you paid. After WannaCry, ransomware became strategic. It became a tool for statecraft. The line between crime and warfare blurred. The code was sold, leaked, and used. The shadow broker's leak was the catalyst. It demonstrated that holding vulnerabilities is a dangerous game. When a nation-state weaponizes a flaw, they create a risk that everyone shares. If the flaw is leaked, the weapon turns against the creator and the world alike. This was the lesson that the cybersecurity community learned the hard way. The NSA's decision to keep Eternal Blue secret ultimately caused more harm to the public than it did to their adversaries. In the years following the attack, the landscape of ransomware changed. The WannaCry model was copied and refined. Ransomware as a service emerged, allowing less skilled criminals to launch sophisticated attacks. But WannaCry remains the benchmark. It was the moment the world realized that its digital dependency was its greatest vulnerability. We rely on these systems for our health, our money, our transport. When they fail, we are helpless. The recovery from WannaCry took weeks in some sectors. Data had to be restored from backups that were often outdated or corrupted. The cost of the disruption far outweighed the ransom collected. It was a Pyrrhic victory for the attackers, but a devastating defeat for the victims. The Bitcoin wallet associated with the attack remains a point of interest. To this day, the funds are largely unspent. They sit there, a digital monument to the attack. Some of the funds were seized by law enforcement in subsequent operations, but the main wallet remains a ghost. It serves as a reminder that in the world of crypto crime, anonymity is a double-edged sword. The blockchain tracks everything, but the identity of the user is hidden behind layers of encryption and obfuscation. CipherTrace continues to monitor these wallets, watching for any movement. The Lazarus group is still active, and they are still looking for the next vulnerability to exploit. We must ask ourselves what this means for the future of security. The days of relying on perimeter defense are over. We are in an era of constant conflict. Every device is a potential entry point. Every unpatched system is a potential weapon for the enemy. The WannaCry attack was a warning shot. It was a test of our resilience. And we failed. It exposed the fragility of our critical infrastructure. It showed that a single piece of code, written by a few anonymous individuals, could bring nations to a standstill. As we move forward, the integration of blockchain forensics and traditional law enforcement is becoming essential. We cannot fight these battles with old tools. We need new eyes, new methods, and a new understanding of the digital battlefield. The story of WannaCry is not just about a virus. It is about the weaponization of information. It is about the consequences of holding secrets in a connected world. It is about the human cost of digital negligence. The red screens that flashed across the globe were a signal. They told us that we are not safe. They told us that the enemy is already inside. And as long as we continue to build complex systems without securing the foundations, the next attack will be worse. The next ransom note will demand more. The next disruption will cost more lives. The question is not if it will happen again. The question is when. If you want to understand how the money moves in the shadows, you need to know where the bodies are buried. WannaCry was just the beginning of the crypto crime revolution. There are other heists, other hacks, and other wallets that hold the secrets of the underworld. In our next investigation, we will trace the largest crypto theft in history, a breach that drained hundreds of millions from a decentralized exchange, leaving the blockchain silent and the users in the dark. The trail leads through a labyrinth of mixers and offshore exchanges, but one mistake by the thieves left a path wide open. You will never look at a transaction hash the same way again. Stay tuned. The truth is waiting in the ledger.